Right now, politics and power both on the menu as congressional leaders, including the new Republican leaders in the Senate, breaking bread with President Obama. Who would have thunk it? Can they find a path to get Washington working again under new management? And then a Navy SEAL comes forward and says he's the one who pulled the trigger and ridded the world of Osama bin Laden. Should our special forces be talking about their covert missions, no matter how significant? And if there is a double standard that's keeping them quiet, is that fair either? And later, the needle and the damage done. As the heroin epidemic continues to spread, a new documentary shows all the people are losing to the drug. A father and a filmmaker very heroically talking about a lost son who fell victim. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This final blow here on this week's midterm elections tied today. First came the campaign, then the voting, and today, the post-election lunch. 3 days after voters pushed Democrats to the minority in both houses of Congress, Republican and Democratic leaders, they went to the White House today to sit, to eat, to talk, and to debate with the president. On the agenda, ways to find whatever common ground they can and perhaps get things done as the president enters his final 2 years in office with an opposition Congress. Breaking bread in an attempt to break gridlock. President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden welcomed Democratic and Republican congressional leaders this afternoon for lunch in the old family dining room at the White House. It was the president's first face-to-face meeting with Republican lawmakers since they won control of the Senate in Tuesday's election. The menu, sea bass finished off with a pumpkin tart, the gesture bipartisanship.
The American people just want to see work done here in Washington. I think they're frustrated by the gridlock. They'd like to see more cooperation.
The president said he wanted to talk about near-term issues like Ebola and the fight against ISIS, as well as a discussion of legislative priorities for the next 2 years.
I am not going to judge ideas based on whether they're Democratic or Republican. I'm going to be judging them based on whether or not they work.
The president also took the opportunity to tout the latest jobs report after the government said earlier today that employers added a solid 214,000 jobs in October.
The unemployment rate now is down to 5.8%. So businesses out there investing, hiring, the economic indicators are going in the right direction.
Before lunch, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy said that's exactly what Republican lawmakers wanted to talk about.
This is the right time to work on getting jobs and the economy moving again.
All right, for analysis, let's bring in our two guys here, Dominic Carter and Andrew Whitman. This, you guys think, just a photo op? Listen, of course it's a photo op, but right after the election, it's amazing how many people have said to me, the day after the president says, hey, get on board with me on immigration or I'll do it without you, then Republicans the next day say, yeah, by the way, we're going to try and repeal Obamacare, as if the president would ever sign that. Do you think the public, do you think you guys will be surprised 6 months from now they'll make more progress, or it'll be just the same, or it'll even be more toxic?
Wait, will we be surprised? I would be terribly surprised.
Do you think they'll get more done?
No.
Or do you think it's going to be just as bad, or do you think it'll be worse?
I think they'll get, I would say they'll get less done, but I'm not sure that's physically possible. So I think they'll probably get the same amount of nothing done. Look, I think this was a lot of posturing today and a lot of posturing for the cameras. The Republicans had to be there because now that they've got the big boy place at the table.
Especially they've been saying he never meets with us, right?
So they couldn't turn their backs on this invitation, but I can't imagine there's a whole lot of common ground that's going to be found between the parties.
I don't think Dominic's Andrew's right, but I don't think it's about common ground. I think it's about self-interest. I think it's in a Republican self-interest to get some stuff done. They're now in charge, officially in January, okay? But in fact, they're in charge right now. They can't anymore say, oh, president, whatever else. I think for totally Machiavellian, self-serving reasons, they're going to want immigration done now so they don't have to deal with it on the campaign trail.
The Republicans?
I do. I really think it'd be the smartest, shrewdest political move they could do to say, see, we're big boys here and girls. We can get stuff done, unlike the Democrats here. Trust us and trust us in 2016.
Immigration is career suicide for Republican leadership. They cannot do immigration because the base does not. When you say immigration, all the base wants to hear is border control, more border control. That's their definition of immigration.
And you know what they'll hear if they go back to their districts, having passed immigration reform? Dominic Carter voted for amnesty.
Right,
for
right.
people to
That's the
illegally come to
exact
this
line.
country
Right.
and take
That's
your
the
money.
exact
All right,
line.
let me ask you. I think it's, forget moronic, I think it's politically really dangerous if they start trying to do this repeal business of Obamacare again. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get the 2/3 of the override. It's not going to work that way. Do you think they still go through the motions and do it again? Or do you think, I think they take the approach, take the stuff they want out and say we're going to replace it with X. Make it hard for the president.
But a death by, some columnist said it today, a death by 1,000 cuts. It would still amount to the same thing, basically, Richard.
But it's the optics of it.
It's the optics of it. But what's going to happen, and Andrew and I are in agreement, it's all posturing right now. There will be nothing. I believe each side is going to do something small to send a message to the country that they're trying to work together. And if the president goes forward on immigration, that's a declaration of war, as I said last night, you've got possibly Loretta Lynch coming up, the U.S. attorney in Brooklyn.
To be the next AG, yep.
That's right. That may not fly. I don't know. You know, it's not going to be
also look
pretty.
bad for them, too.
I think you'll see the Republicans actually pass a repeal of Obamacare to force Obama to veto it. I think they're just going to do that to make everybody happy and put everybody on record. I don't think they actually think they're going to get that done, and then they'll go after it.
Know they're not gonna get
but then
it
they'll
done.
go after it in smaller ways, or they'll work on other methods.
All right, let's go from
tackling it.
Washington to New York State, because there was some real news today in state politics. Many of the state's most influential lawmakers, they're in Puerto Rico right now for the Somos El Futuro conference. You like that, Dominic? And in an interview, Jeff Klein, and I think Andrew called him, if not the most mysterious man in Albany, maybe arguably one of the most powerful. He heads the IDC, the group of the breakaway Democrats here, who've been working with Republicans but pledged to jump back to the Democratic side after the elections. Well, maybe now not so much. Klein is now hinting he may jump back again and work with the GOP, even though they already control enough seats to form a majority all on their own. Take a listen to Mr. Klein yourself.
I've had a great working relationship with Senator Skelos. I hope that continues, and I hope he agrees with me that a coalition government was not only good over the last 2 years, but is something that I think really works very, very well in the months and years ahead.
Ay caramba, Dominic. Even he must be confused what side of the bed he's sleeping on this one. What's going on here?
It's called raw political power. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I want to be in power. I want to have the power for many of the jobs behind the scenes. I want to be a deal maker. Me, me, me. It's as simple as that, Richard. We can sugarcoat this and call it something else, but it's raw political ambition.
There is a functional reason for the Republicans to be interested in this. They've got a 32-31 seat advantage right now. So there's one seat, and there is a Republican state senator who's under federal indictment right now. That's no longer.
There's always a lawmaker
right.
indictment.
But so the numbers could change, and to have more votes in their pocket to make sure that they'll be able to hold on to the majority in the state Senate. I understand why Dean Skelos would be interested in doing this. I also understand why Jeff Klein would be interested in doing it.
Except, far be it from me, who's always accused of being as cynical as anybody.
Here comes the distasteful
But
argument.
come on. I mean, even Sybil would be ashamed of this with the multiple personalities. Pick a flipping side and stick with it. And don't tell me that, why do I have to choose? You chose the campaign. You promised you were going to do something after the election, and now you're doing it again. Shame on the district here for buying this hook, line, and sinker every time. And again, if you wanted to do this, run as an independent. All right? Run as an independent. Don't run as a Democrat.
But that would be much, much harder.
Oh, my God.
And his district didn't penalize him for doing this for the last 2 years. I mean, he just did that. We just went through a phase where he was working with the opposition party.
What did he say during the campaign, Andrew?
That he was going to work with Democrats if the Democrats earned a majority.
He said after the election.
After the election.
He didn't say if they got the majority or not.
Well, no, he actually
I don't know why I'm bothered to parse words with him, but yeah.
He did parse it a little bit and said if they form the majority, if Democrats have the majority in the state Senate, we'll caucus
We've been
with
at
them.
this too long, but the electorate deserves better. I'm sorry. And I'd say the same thing, if he was going to go to the Democrats and he had promised the Republicans.
Well, no, wait.
Pick a flipping
Because
side.
we compare him to Pedro Espada a lot, who
you
our
love.
old friend
Yeah.
Pedro, who's watching from, I don't know, Sing Sing or Attica or wherever, who...
Maybe it's some sushi stop.
Who basically did the same thing with a group of Democrats a few years ago.
And what do we say about it?
But it was entirely self-serving.
What do you think this is?
You could make the argument, looking through the last 2 years of the state Senate in Albany, that Klein, while he's certainly helped himself, has also advanced a lot of Democratic issues, and he's advanced a lot.
Listen, it is what it is. Let's not apply any altruistic rationales here for Mr. Klein, and by the way, for the other 7 folks with him here. They're doing this for number 1. All right, now finally, a lot of Democrats in the country, they're angry with President Obama. You all know why. I mean, they need a scapegoat after the midterms, maybe even some of it legitimate, the concerns they put at the president's desk. But Democrats in New York, they've got someone else here they're pretty mad about, and that is Governor Andrew Cuomo. And it's interesting. There's a lot of reasons why. Steve Israel, the outgoing Democratic, the head of the DCCC, the campaign committee for Democratic Congress, they lost 15, 18 seats in the midterms, and 3 of them in New York. And when they said, well, why? He goes, well, you know what? They said, did you work with the governor? You may have seen this in the Times today. He said, let me go on the record by saying none of the meetings we had turned into anything here. And he made it really clear that the governor was looking out for only number 1. Now, all of a sudden, you take a look that it goes beyond even that. Working Families Party. What do they think they were going to get? That the governor was going to be a very invested partner in the election process. As soon as he got their endorsement, he got on the line, he was basically a ghost. I know this is how he plays ball, and I know if you were telling the Working Families Party, if you worked out a deal with it, get it in writing. Get how many fundraisers he's going to show up.
I would have told the Working Families Party, Dan Cantor and folks, and I would have said to them, if you embarrass the governor publicly, you're done. And they went way out on a limb, embarrassing him. And so I don't care what he promised them.
But he still wanted their endorsement.
Okay,
still got put on the line.
No, Mayor de Blasio twisted their hands and forced their hand to endorse
they did
it.
it.
But where else were they going to go? They're going to risk losing their party? They don't get 50,000 votes? I mean, they weren't going to do that.
My only point
Green
is,
Party
Dominic,
already moved up ahead of them on the ballot line.
There's one more block now. And not that the liberals were doing cartwheels over them anyway, right? But there's one more block who feels that they got shafted by the gov. Now, in the end, Israel, what's he going to really do to the governor? I get that. But there was a lot of Democrats, congressional Democrats, who, in the end, the governor's going to want some Washington money right now. They're not going to go jump through hoops for him after what he did. If it suits them, they will. But they're not going to do him any favors. He sometimes picks fights he doesn't need to. That's my point. We saw Spitzer do it. Cuomo's more sophisticated about it, but I just don't see these fights as being necessary. He could have shown up to some of these fundraisers for some of the congressmen. He could have shown his face. Would it really killed him? Really?
With this governor, you have to understand. You have to understand
Obviously, I don't.
The personality of this governor. It's all about me and good luck to the rest of you.
Okay, but Andrew, when ambitions go
operates.
beyond your current state, and your current state in terms of your position you hold, that doesn't work. You don't have to be Bill Clinton where you want to be to every single fundraiser on the planet, okay? But there's a happy medium, isn't there? I mean, some of this, I believe, it's not just trying to, beat the Napoli because you want to beat the Napoli. You go overboard, pushing them upstairs into a whole different floor in a room. I mean, it's petty.
I'm not sure how many Democrats in other parts of the country are going to look at the fact that Cuomo didn't go out stumping for state Senate candidates or congressional candidates in New York and really hold that against him. He pulled the same thing that Chris Christie pulled in New Jersey last year, which is, I'm going to take care of me. And try to win by as much as I possibly can, and we'll pick it up from there. I think these Democrats around the state have a good reason to be upset with the governor.
There's a perfect analogy, and with a lot of ways. There's a lot of Christie Cuomo comparisons that maybe politically on social issues they don't see eye to eye, but they come from the same playbook in some ways.
And Dominic,
maybe
you would know better.
Pressures, but yeah.
You probably know better than anybody else at the table. The Christie that we see in public feels like the Cuomo that people see in private. I mean, right. Cuomo just doesn't play that card in public.
But you left out the master of that three-ring circus, Giuliani.
I knew it. Yes. The time, 6:14, Giuliani.
No, because they're puppets. They pale in comparison to Rudy Giuliani.
Okay.
Trust me when I tell you.
But it didn't work for Rudy until the very end, and that was
It almost worked. He became America's mayor.
And then
it almost
didn't work for the White House.
Yeah.
Didn't work for the White House.
Coming up next, killing bin Laden, one of the brightest moments for the Obama administration, you can argue. Now, a Navy SEAL says he's the one who pulled the trigger. Should he be talking about covert ops? And is there a double standard on who can and can't talk? That next. Stay with us.